And welcome to client-side web development. This is week 2 of the client-side web development class, and we're going to start with lesson 4. So in this lesson, we're going to go over just try to get a high-level understanding of JavaScript. And again, we're going to cover what web scripting is, what it's good for, how scripting and programming are different and similar, what JavaScript is and where it came from, how to include JavaScript commands in a web page. So there's different ways of doing that, what JavaScript can do for your web pages, beginning and ending your scripts, how to do that, formatting JavaScript statements. We'll also look at how a script can display a result, including a script within a web document, testing your scripts in a browser, modifying it, dealing with errors, and moving scripts into separate files, how to do that. So let's go ahead and get started with scripts and programs. So a script is a list of actions, and a script is basically written JavaScript and can range from a single action to a full application. JavaScript is an interpreted language, and the browser executes each line of code as it comes in. So, quick introduction to JavaScript. It was developed in 1995 by Netscape Communications Corporation, the maker of the defunct Netscape web browser. JavaScript was the first web scripting language to be supported by browsers and is the most popular web scripting language today. Some of the things you can do with JavaScript, you can display messages to the user as part of a web page in the browser status line or in alert boxes. You can validate the contents of a form and make calculations, animate images, create ad banners, interact with users, detect which browser is in use and what features are supported, modify all or part of a web page without requiring the user to reload the page, and display and interacting with data retrieved from a remote server. So here's a quick example of how JavaScript fits onto a web page. And I do have a sample of that. So I've, in this folder, I have my JavaScript folder, and I have a bunch of different examples of how you can use JavaScript in your program. So the first one you see up here is this is the date, and what it does is it actually writes the date that this document, this index.html file, was last modified. So if I go ahead and run it, the part that prints the date is this part over here. So as you can see, this web page was modified on January 15th, 2025 at this time. So this tells you exactly when it was last modified. All right, so there's 4 places that you can actually use your scripts. You can use it in the body of the page, in the header. Usually place your JavaScript functions there. Within an HTML tag for use as event handlers, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and in a separate file entirely using the .js extension on the file. So let's go back here. All right, so one way of placing your JavaScript is you can put it right in one of these events. So here we have a button, that click me button that you saw on the previous page. So when you click the button, this kicks off this event handler, this onClick event handler that calls this code that just displays an alert that says you clicked on the button. So if you want to see that in action, you can go here, and I can click me. And as you see, it says you clicked on the button. So that's the JavaScript executing to display this message. That's that alert you saw over here. The other place you can place the JavaScript is right in the HTML, like you're seeing here. So here's one example where you have your JavaScript in between these script tags. Same thing here. The other place you can see it is down here. You can put in a separate file. So instead of having it in between the script tags, you can create these script tags and say, hey, the source of the script is going to be in this alert.js file, which I have here in the same directory. And this is that alert. And all it does is says alert hello world. So because this is in the body here, it actually gets executed when the page loads. So that's why when we reload our page here, let's say I refresh the page, that's this hello world that's getting kicked off over here. All right, so let's continue on. Let's see. So you can use separate JavaScript files, which I showed you in the last example. You can go ahead and put an alert. Again, I showed you that example. Some other JavaScript capabilities, you can use it to improve navigation, validate forms, special effects, and remote scripting. And again, later chapters we're going to cover these areas in more detail. Another way we can display JavaScript is by displaying the time. So here, let's take you to this example. This is the same time example here. So here's a couple different scripts that display the time. So this particular script here gets the local time and the UTC time. So this is like the universal time. It's basically also sometimes called GMT or Greenwich Mean Time, and it's kind of like the standard time. That's basically the time, whatever the time is in England, that's going to be your UTC. So what this does is it shows you the different scripts to get the local time, to get UTC time. And then this script down here shows you how to get, again, when you do this new date, that creates a new date variable that has the current time in it. And then you can go ahead and get the hours, the minutes, and seconds, and print those out too. So that's what you see over here. In our example is we print out both the local time and the UTC time. And then this is the other one that printed out the hour, minutes, and seconds. Okay, and that was the second one that did hours, minutes, seconds, printed that out. And then the last thing is dealing with JavaScript errors. One thing you want to do is sometimes what you can do is you can open up the debugger here, which if you go and right click anywhere in your browser and click inspect, that opens up the inspector here. And then we're going to click this console, and you see that there was an unexpected token. There was an error. Now where did that error come from? That error actually came from this script right here, because I'm missing the close parentheses before the semicolon, and because of that it's giving me an error. So if I go ahead here and save it, everything refreshes, and now you notice down the console that error's gone because I fixed it. Okay, and that's it for lesson 4, the JavaScript errors. We're going to move on to lesson 5, which is the how to validate and debug your code. So basically, we're just going to talk about where do you go to validate HTML and CSS, how to use the developer tools to debug your HTML and CSS, and how to use the JavaScript console to debug JavaScript. So let's start with validating your web content. Good place to start or to go is this validator.w3.org. So we're going to do that. We'll say validator.w3.org, and it takes you here. So one thing we're going to do here is I have to go to my lesson 5 folder because that's where I am now. So let's say I want to validate this HTML to make sure it's valid. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and then go to this validator. And what you could do is you can paste in your HTML in here. And it does give you more options here. Some different ways you can validate, and some options that'll give you when you click on this check button. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check, see what happens. And it looks like everything looked good. The only thing, it kind of gives you a warning. It's not an error, but it's a warning. It says the section lacks a heading. So it's saying you should consider adding H2 to H6 elements to add additional headings to all the sections. Or else use a div element instead for any cases where no heading is needed. So it's saying a section probably should have a heading. So the way we would fix this is we would go here to the section and we'll probably put an H2 because it said it was H2 to H6. This is a new section. So if we go ahead and save that, so I'll go live with this. There we go. So this is the HTML validation, but what I really want to do is I want to go back here. Let me copy this again. And then go to my validator. Okay, now I got my new HTML. I'm going to click check. And it's still complaining about my section. Oh, because I think it has to be inside that. Maybe that's where it wants it. So let's see how to fix this. Alright, so let's go here. Again, this looks the same. Go ahead and copy this. Copy. And then we'll paste this in. Check. Ah, that's fixed it. It needed the H2 to be inside of the section in order for it to fix the... It was a warning. It wasn't really necessary, but it kind of fixed that. Okay, the other way you can get this to work too is if you go up here, let's go back a few steps here. You can actually give it a web address. So if you want to say, hey, I want to validate HTTPS www.google.com. and see if they have valid HTML. It looks like they have a whole bunch of errors in their HTML, which is kind of interesting that Google has issues in their HTML. Interesting. Okay, so the next thing is debugging your HTML and your CSS. So let's go back to our JavaScript validator. I'm going to go ahead and click inspect again. Now the nice thing about this is you can actually go ahead, again if I didn't inspect one more time, it goes directly to the line. And if you notice, if I highlight the any of the lines in here, it will also highlight it up here as I do that. And what happens here, you can see all the different stylings from here. So now I have this, and this is styled with the color blue. So if I look at, oh, it's because it's got my style here. Is that saying, oh, the paragraphs all have the color blue, which is exactly what this is saying. So anytime I put a paragraph marker, it always has blue, and it also has how all the defaults that are set up for the paragraph marker. Okay, so that's HTML and CSS. Again, we went through the inspector already, so that's fine. Yeah, and we talked about CSS already, so that's pretty good. All right, next thing we want to do is we might want to also debug JavaScript. So in my example here, if we go to my index.html, I have the script here. So I can debug this by, let's go here. And if we go over to where it says sources, you see under lesson 4 there's the index.html. What I can, oh sorry, not lesson 4, because I'm on the wrong one, that's why. There we go. Sorry, let's go, that was lesson 4, I'll close that. So we're not confused anymore. So here we have lesson 5. We're in the index.html here. The other thing you want to do, here's the script I want to debug. So the nice thing with the debugger is I can click on here, and when I go to refresh, because this script only fires when the page loads, so I have to refresh the page in order to fire again, because it's already run. So if I hit enter, now you notice what happens here. Now I get a nice little debugger. And what you could do is there's these controls so you can step through your code. So if you hit next, notice now if I put my mouse over name, it displays the contents, which is John Smith. Then the next thing I could do is go ahead and run the next line, which is just writes John Smith. Notice John Smith isn't up here yet, but if I hit next, John Smith gets written out. And then I'm just going to hit continue, so it just finishes loading. All right, so that was the lesson 5. We're going to move on to lesson 6. Okay, so here we're going to go more in depth on how to work with fonts, text, blocks, lists, and tables. So before we do that, I'm going to kind of show you how I've set up my lesson 6 folder. And here, I'll go ahead and kind of rerun this thing. Okay, so here, let's close that. All right, so what I've done is I've kind of created this nice little menu bar so that if I want to go to any separate pages in here, this one just kind of shows you this. Then I have one for formatting that shows different ways to format your text, how to use no formatting, fonts, Text alignment, so you see all these text aligned all different ways, all these ordered lists, tables, and finally separating things in columns. And that goes along with all the different parts of lesson 6. So just very quickly, we're going to go over text formatting, tweaking fonts, special characters, aligning text on the page, how to properly do it, 3 types of HTML lists, how to nest lists within lists, tables, and CSS. So let's start with special characters. I think we've already seen this on a previous example where the copyright symbol, the way you display the copyright symbol, I'm displaying it here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my index.html, which is this one. And my copyright symbol is that this string right here prints that copyright symbol. So if you put ampersand, copy, semicolon, that prints the copyright symbol on your web page. And then any text, this is just regular text that we put after the copyright symbol. So if you noticed over here, I was able to put my footer all the way down here. I formatted it so it's always at the bottom. So no matter how big I make this this window, I'm trying to grab the edge of the window, but it doesn't seem to be working. Oh, there it goes. All right, so if you see that, as I move it up, the footer is always at the bottom. So the question is, how did I do that? Let's start with that. So we're going to go over to my lesson 6 folder, and we'll go to the style.css. And if you notice, I have a footer rule. So I'm going to head and do that and do that. So my footer has its own, it's in the footer element that I put there. So what I'm saying, I want to style this footer element. So I give it a fixed position. So I have to set the position to fixed. And then I make sure that all around it is just 0. So it's all the way to the edges. The width is always 100%. So it always takes the entire width of the page. I give it a background color just to kind of denote it. That could be anything. And I give the font color white, and then I align it to the center. So as you can see, I got red, white, and it's centered onto the page. Okay, so let's go ahead. Again, we talked about the copyright symbol already, so I'll move on. The other thing you can do is there's a lot of special formatting that we go through, like superscript, subscript, emphasis, strong, and the pre, which we'll show you in a bit. So that's this formatting page that I set up here. So this is a superscript. So if you want to put something just above, kind of like an exponent, you want to print an exponent or anything, you do that. You can do a subscript, and I mostly you can use subscripts for like footnotes and things like that. There's emphasized, and there's strong, which is basically looks like it just bolds things. Now the pre, this is where I have my formatting, and if you look at the actual pre page, the no formatting page that I have here, that's not what I wanted. Why did it do that? Formatting. Oh, sorry. There we go. That's better. Oh no, I wanted the no formatting. There we go. Okay, so that's this pre element, and what that does is it says I don't want any styling between these. So I want it to print exactly how I have it spaced and laid out. And that's, if you notice, I just put, these are just tabs in between, but it preserves the tabs and the spacing like it's printed out here. And it also makes sure it uses non-proportional fonts so that all the fonts are exactly the same width, so there's no jagged edges or anything. So anytime you want to, if you ever need to format things exactly how you type it, like you see it here, because if you see how it comes out here, it looks exactly the same. All right. Okay, so again, this is the pre-example. Tweaking fonts. So the font tag should never be used to tweak fonts. You always want to use CSS. And you can change your font family. So I can go ahead and do that with fonts here. This is a good example. So basically I took this and I did a bunch of things. I gave it a color. I gave it a size. And if you see over here, so if I go over to fonts, so all I did is I put this font styling text in between these paragraph tags, and I gave it a class of font. So if you look at my style.css, this is the rule that's styling that piece of text. So I gave it what font family I wanted it in, the size of the font, the color, and I automatically transform it to uppercase. So if you notice here, font styling is mixed case, but because I tell it to transform it to an uppercase, what it did is it uppercased the letters for me. And that's all done with CSS. You also have the capability of using what are called web fonts. So if there's some built-in fonts that are built into all the web browsers that are standard, but if you wanted to add your own font, you can do that. And this kind of gives you a little thing. Now, it's kind of outside the scope of this class, but just know that you can do it, and you can do some research on how to get the font. You have to actually download the actual font file so that the browser knows how to render the font, etc. So there's some pretty nifty fonts that you can actually use out there if you get a hold of them and download them. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is aligning text to the page. So if we go over here to text alignment, notice here we have, this is right align, center, and left align. So how do we do this? If we go to text alignment here, all right. So what we did is we went ahead and styled it. So we went and did a quick styling. So the right aligned, we did text align right, text align center, and text align left. Another way we could have done it is created different classes and then put these rules inside of the CSS file. But I kind of did it this way just for clarity so you can see exactly what the rules are. And it's just these text align rules here. Yeah, and this is just the same thing here. Okay, so the next group of elements we're going to look at are the different lists. So let's go to my list here. And here's the example. Here's an ordered list. And in order to do an ordered list, let's go to my list over here, and we'll work our way down. So this is the ordered list, and it's just an OL element with line items in between. So this is just your basic ordered list. So by default, hold on. If All right, so by default, if you do ordered letters, it just numbers them numerically one through five, because there's five elements in the list. The unordered list just uses just a kind of a generic bullet. Definition list is the next one. So the unordered, instead of saying OL, it's UL. So that's this one. The definition list uses DL for definition list. Then there's the definition term. And DD is the definition. And what it does by default is it just spaces it out, where the term is first, and then in the next line it indents the definition. The other thing you can have is you can also have a nested list, where you have a UL and you have another UL within this UL. And the effect that gives you is it starts indenting when you have these nested lists. So it indents catfish inside of the fish list. Next thing you'll have is the Roman numerals. So let's see how we did that. Yeah, for these, what we did is we created special CSS for each of these. So the Roman numerals, if you look at Roman, I just changed the list style type to upper for an ordered list. So as you can see, these, let's see, I'm going to close these for now. This is what I want. I just want my list here. And then these are the ordered lists, but it tells it what, basically this just changes the bullet to Roman numerals. So here you have the Roman numerals, uppercase letters, lowercase letters, and then decimal. And if you look at the style, you have upper, lower, and decimal. So let's look at upper, you say upper alpha. Lower is lower alpha, and then to get numbers is decimal. And this is the default. Actually, this is what you get by default if you don't give it any styling. All right, and so I think going through that, we covered all the lists in detail there. Okay, so for tables, we're going to look at tables here. There's different kinds of tables that we put together. So what we did here, and again, I'm going to pull out the tables, HTML. We'll start at the top here with the first table. Yeah, the way I styled this one, if you look at the table here, is here we give all the different elements that are in a table. Again, table row, table header, table data. And here I say, okay, I want a border on all of these. I want a border 1 pixel, solid black. I want the border to be collapsed because by default it doesn't do that. And then my padding is, that padding inside each of the cells is 5 pixels. So that's how I ended up with this. This is a 5 pixel padding around each one. And notice they're all basically formatted the same because they use this, the CSS for, where's the table? Yeah, the CSS for the table here. So, okay, the next thing is that full size. So let's go back to our table here. And again, the table is exactly the same. The only difference is I changed the CSS. So for full size, I just set my width to 100%. And that gives it this effect, where it gives it, this is a width of 100%. So it kind of stretches out the table in here. The next thing is the 20% cell. So for this one, I put it 20, and I just set the width to 20%. And it has this effect. So it puts it at 20. All right. And then there's the align and span. So if I look over here, I could do vertical. This one didn't come out. It looks basically the same as this one because there's no difference. So even by trying to change the alignment, it doesn't really change anything there. One thing you may want to do with your table is if you want to add semantic meaning to your table, like there's these special semantic tags like T-head, T-foot, T-body. So if your table has a header, a footer, and a body, you can denote those parts of the table. I kind of did that here with all of these. So all these are semantics. So this first part is the header, the body's the next two columns, and then the last one's the foot. But as you can see, it actually does absolutely nothing to the formatting. It's really just semantics so that the screen readers know what these parts are and can basically say that. All right. Yeah, again, you can control the table size, which we've done, spanning. What it says is back in the old days before CSS, programmers used to use tables for doing page layout. But again, it's not recommended because you always want to separate your layout from the content. So it's better to use CSS columns to do your layout. That's what we're going to do here. So the nice thing with CSS columns, and again, I'll go over to columns here to show you. So what we've done here is if we look over at our columns.html down here, what I've done is I created an article with 3 different paragraph elements in the article. And this is what split those up into multiple columns. So each one of these paragraphs is its own column. So the way we did that in our CSS is down here in the article, as you could see. There's these special column rules that you can change in your element. So here we're saying let's set a rule for the article where our articles are going to be have 3 columns. The gap between each column is 21 pixels. The rule width is going to be 1 pixel, solid, etc. So if you look over here, these are those rules that are 1 pixel wide, but the spacing is that extra spacing that we said there. Okay, so as you can see, this one is pretty much what we did over there. Is we took that article and we put all those in there. Okay, and again, you can play around with that and see what different effects you can get for creating a column. All right, so that brings us to the end of lesson 6. So that's pretty much the end of the week 2 lessons. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll talk to you for the week 3 lessons.